everyone. Welcome back. You're listening to the Torah with Cypora podcast. I am Cypora, and today is a very exciting day because we have just the most exciting guest. And I have to tell you, it's wild, the world that Hashem sometimes sets up, because on the very last episode of the podcast, I talked about my experience at Aish. You could go back and listen to that, where I spent a week in Israel taking Aish classes, basically from 9 to 4. And just I wanted to have like an all-in reconnecting experience. And it was really unbelievable. And I definitely recommend it. I know this is vacation season, so if you get a chance and you're in Israel, definitely look into the free classes that are given. They're all unbelievable. And one of the rabbis that were there, that was one of my favorites, and I did not plan this when I recorded the last episode. I had no idea that this was going to happen, but thank you to my friend Yocheved for arranging this, that on the very next episode, he would be here. Really, our guest needs no introduction, but I'm going to introduce him anyway. Our next guest grew up living in a mansion in Brentwood, West Los Angeles, California, alongside people like O.J. Simpson and other tzaddikim and tzidkanios. He grew up traditional, but not observant. He received a BA in humanities from the University of California at Santa Barbara. For 12 years, he served internationally on a professional level and continues to serve today. Plus, he is an accomplished mountain biker and professional musician. He is now observant, but has also made quite a name for himself in the Kiruv world and in the Torah world. He received his rabbinical ordination from Aish TORAH and the chief rabbi of Jerusalem. He now lives in Yerushalayim with his wife and his family. And he continues to learn, teach, and has also created a seminar, which I'm sure we'll talk about at some point, called The Possible You, which has branches in the US, the UK, and in Israel, which is a game-changing experience to allow people to reach their unlimited potential. I am so excited to welcome the legend himself, Rabbi Yom Tov GLAZER. Thank you so much for being here. Welcome to the podcast. And I know that you are quite a busy person, so I plan to use every single minute that I have with you, and I'm very excited that you're here.
Excellent. Thanks for having me.
So I was wondering if you noticed when I was giving my little introduction that there was something that I was very careful in the way that I worded.
No.
Okay. So I said that you grew up, you were not observant, but now you are observant. And the reason why I said it this way is because actually the Aish classes that I was referring to that I was in, one of the things that you said that left a big impression on me was that you don't like the word orthodox or religious. Because,
yeah, you're a good student, good listener.
Now, it happens to be that I think it's something that we probably share a passion for, which is the importance of language. And I think that that's what you were getting at, the significance of words and how what we choose to call things and what we choose to label things are really significant in the way that we perceive them. And I think you were onto something, because since then, that was about 2.5 years ago or so, we have all of these shows like Unorthodox and My Unorthodox Life. And I'm thinking if it was like My Non-Observant Life, it just doesn't have the same commercial appeal. So I think you were definitely onto something with that wording. And I just wanted to talk to you a little bit about that, about the significance of language, because I do think that for a long time, I felt like that was something that maybe was lost on a lot of people, how important it is. But now it seems like even not to get like political, but just it seems like there's a war on words a little bit, and people are starting to wake up to how significant, just, we can't change the reality of this, so we'll just change how we word it. We'll just change the word, or we'll just change the definition, things like that. So I'm curious what you would think.
Yeah,
about.
Well said. Yeah, those two words, religion, like Judaism as a religion, or the word orthodox. Maybe I'll start with orthodox. So you probably remember this, but everyone else wasn't in class that day.
Yeah.
So orthodox was a term given to us by the Reform and Conservative movement. So we for sure don't have to take the label that they gave us.
Yeah.
It was given to us because it comes from the word strict, and meaning they're basically, it's kind of like a pig shows both claws, showing it has split hooves. Look, I'm kosher. And those people over there, they're just the strict ones. Those bozos over there are the orthodox. But we're just as Jewish By the way, they are just as Jewish, but to label
Yeah.
label those who actually strive and sacrifice for Torah, and to suddenly label them strict, and they're far from strict. In fact, every Jewish posek who makes Jewish law decisions and stuff is always going for the biggest leniencies he can. He's not trying to make it harder. Like, we are lenient, we're not strict. So if someone who's not raised observant sees our lifestyle and says, "Wow, they live such a strict lifestyle," it's not, but we're very observant. We're doing our best to observe our tribal rights. And we are from the tribe of Israel, this amazing tribe, an eternal nation throughout all of world history. The city on the hill, the north on the compass. We are the ones who point towards values and goodness and morality and stuff like that. What they called ethical monotheism. That's our job, but we do so by observing our Torah, keeping the Torah. That's Orthodox, and the word religion is just, religions are basically man-made, and
Right.
I mean, every religion I've ever heard of has, and they don't even say it's not, meaning Islam, they definitely say Muhammad created, and Christianity was definitely created by the apostles who lived a couple hundred years after JC, and every religion is man-made, but Judaism's not. Judaism's actually 3 million people at the base of a mountain, and that's not a man-made religion.
Yeah, and I didn't even think of it specifically that way, where it's forcing observant Jews into a category that we didn't necessarily say that we belong in. Hey guys, before we continue, I want to remind you about our merch store. If you did not know, we have a merch store set up. Go check it out. We have sweatshirts, we have hoodies, water bottles, mugs. Everything is so cute. You can find it by going on the website, podpage.com/Torah with Cypora / and click on shop merch. And there you go. Get yourself some merch. And it is interesting to look at the way that the Reform, Conservative, and Orthodox Jewry, like how those sects are kind of, the lines are changing, because now you have a whole group of, like, they call themselves modern Orthodox, but like they're basically the same as like what conservative used to be.
Meaning they would potentially text on Shabbos, or get in a cab, or get in a car or something.
Yeah, or whatever those things are, but like they're just, quote unquote Orthodox, which, what does that really mean? Like the word observant is just a much more accurate.
Oh, you're saying we could call them observant as well, rather than modern Orthodox?
I was saying the opposite.
Oh, you're saying they're not so observant?
They're not necessarily so observant. There is obviously a lot of modern Orthodox Jews that are observant. So I just think the word observant, it just seems a lot more accurate. And even the thing that you were saying about religion, that I didn't think of that either, that it just puts us all in that same group of, like, the group of religions, right? Which is like a different thing than being Torah observant, which is very specific. And even a lot of people say they're religious, but I'm like, sometimes they'll say things in conversation and I'm like, do you believe that the Torah is emes? Because whatever you're saying right now, I don't know that that's really what.
It's funny. If you with the word religion, it turns out that the people who are actually observant are a tiny category. Only observant Jews are the Jews who actually know the 3 Yesodei Emunah, meaning they know there's a God. Meaning they did all their homework. They know there's a God, which the Rambam requires for fulfilling the commandment. So they know there's a God. They know Torah is not man-made. And they know that the tradition throughout all the generations is the real deal. Those are the observant Jews.
Yeah, because otherwise, what are you observing, really, right? It's like, it's only if you're observing Torah.
If I ask the average chassid in Mincha, where I just came from here in Lakewood, if I ask the average chassid, like, if you were raised in Iraq, would you be a Muslim? He would say yes. And so because you were raised Hasidic, so now you're a Jew. That's religion. Right.
I mean, this is something that I definitely have thought about a lot, because, like I never wanted to be that kind of person that, like, just because I was raised with a certain belief system, that, like, that is the reason why I'll accept it. And so I kind of consider myself like FFBT, which is like from birth Baal Tshuva, which, I think I think many of my listeners probably would relate to it because this is the type of conversations that I like to have on the podcast, which is, somebody who was born from, but then also, like you said, did their homework, right? Like that's just such an important thing.
Sure. Yeah.
And it doesn't mean that if you were born into a specific belief system that it's wrong either, like maybe you got lucky and you were born into the belief system that's right. And in a certain way, like I think that when you get into kind of some of the deeper, more existential beliefs of Judaism, like the Bishvili Nivra Olam and things like that, it's actually a lot less hard to believe that you were born as a Jew. It's like, yeah,
Right.
because that's kind of the point. It's like you were supposed to have this journey. Does that make sense? Or I'm like getting a little out there.
One cool thing about living in Israel is there's no such thing as Reform Orthodox, Conservative, Modern Orthodox. Like it doesn't
Right.
exist. You're just a Jew living in Israel, and whatever you keep. And whatever they're up to is what they're up to, and they love it. And no one ever gave them a category. Now, if they want to go to synagogue, it will definitely be a fully operating synagogue with all 19 brachas of Shmoneh Esrei. Whereas the synagogues here will have like abridged versions and politically correct versions. I was once handed a siddur in a university campus at Shabbos I was leading, and I'm leading Musaf, and I get to the part where it's supposed to say Nasev and Nakriv in Musaf, and we will sacrifice, meaning we will offer.
Yeah.
It said Asu v'hikrivu. They did, and they sacrificed, but we would never do such a thing like that. It was written into the siddur that they gave me. So the guy next to me had an art scroll siddur. When I got to that and I saw those words, I didn't even say them. I just went, Fear. I flung the siddur across the shul and grabbed the art scroll from the guy next to me and went like, Nasiv and Nakriv. I said it nice and strong. We will do, and we will offer.
You were making a political statement.
Yeah, and I think Rabbi Cindy was particularly upset. The campus rabbi was there. She wasn't too happy with it.
Yeah, it's interesting because when I see people who take the Torah and then try to make it politically correct, to me that's so much more angering than just people who deny Torah, because it's like bringing the pig into the Beis Hamikdash. It's like, don't take the Torah and try to distort it to make it be what you're comfortable with it saying, or make it be what feels warm and fuzzy in your heart. Like that's not what it says, and it's like something that is becoming, unfortunately in this generation, it's like a common type of thing because people are very sensitive and all of these other things, and it's really sheker.
Yeah, it is. But on the other hand, you can to dan l'chafschut a little judgment favorably, as they are they refuse to let go. Like meaning they really have left the path, but they just can't admit it, and they're gonna try to Jewicize their current level of observance.
That's an interesting way to look at it.
And it's like it's that Pintele Yid that just refuses to fade away into the dust of the exiles.
Wow. Yeah, that's definitely like not a perspective that I'm like a hardcore Litvak. My grandmother was born in Lithuania, and my family's Navardic. I come from I'm like fifth generation from the altar of Navardic. So
you would love my seminars. You would love. You never did my seminar, did you?
I have not done your seminar, but I do want to talk about it. We could already talk about it now because I'm in graduate school right now, and I'm just have a bunch of things. So I'm like, as soon as I could get my head above water, I definitely want to attend. But I think that a lot of my listeners would probably be a very good fit for your seminar. So maybe we could already talk about it now. Like what is it? Right. What's like the elevator pitch?
It's Novardic. That's how we segue. It's a serious shakeup. I mean, you got to be very strong to go into it. It's not for the weak of heart or faint of heart. It's a total shakedown of who you are, who you thought you were, all your operating system as a human being is put into question, but not put into question intellectually, like, okay, now we're going to put into question this. No,
Oof.
it's literally put into question, meaning you yourself by day 2, maybe by day 3 of 4 days, even day 1, a little, you're starting to like say to yourself, like, who the hell am I? Like, I don't even know who I am anymore. And that place is the most beautiful place of creating anything you want, meaning that's the canvas that anyone can paint on. Unfortunately, there's not a lot of room to paint on our canvases. We've all learned how to survive mostly our childhood. And there were great short-term strategies, what we came up with to deal with, our little crises as kids that probably weren't much of crises, but it's, when you're a little kid, though, it's a hell of a crisis. And especially the fact that you don't go to your parents and tell them about it. You keep it all to yourself. You don't want to disappoint them. I don't know. But so then you come up with these short-term personality moves, mostly fight and flight type moves of how can I dominate or how can I avoid being dominated. And we made these short-term strategy moves as children. The problem is that the short-term strategies became long-term personalities.
Right.
And then that's how we live. We live based on those long-term personalities. And that's who marries us. And that's who, comes forward at a kiddish when you meet somebody for the first time. And suddenly you're on vacation from that person.
Wow.
And what happens is, because every person is made of a soul, there's actually 4 levels of being that's inside of an actual human being. There's 4 levels of that being. And those 4 levels suddenly shine forth. And as they shine forth, like, some really beautiful things become possible for the person. And the cute thing is that all the personality you created is still there for you. Meaning, for example, I did the whole surfer thing as a kid growing up. I was like Mr. Cool. You couldn't be cool enough for me. I was such a snob. Oh my gosh. I mean, you would have hated me. And I would have not been nice to you, and I certainly wouldn't have come onto your podcast. And I was at West LA, surfer. I'm a very thin, fit person today. I was the same thin, fit person, but I was 20 pounds heavier in muscles from paddling 8 hours a day in the ocean. And I was just, long, curly, like literally these curls coming down my back, and just like, you couldn't touch me. And I couldn't be touched. I was so aloof. And the funny thing is after all my breakthroughs and all, like, the getting rid of that stupid persona that who needs that. So I was coming to a Shabbaton in Manhattan, and they had 200 people sign up for it, and I was leading a Shabbaton back in the heyday of Kiruv. We're talking like, I don't even know, the 90s probably. And no, I think it was already in the early 2000s. But anyway, so I get to the thing, and they've got, in front of the door of the hall is a giant cutout of me with a surfboard, and it, like, thumbs up, holding the surfboard, and it's kind of like I'm pointing into the Shabbaton. And here's the cool thing, is that I get to go be the surfer. Even though that's bankrupt and means nothing to me. And I would never, ever hurt another soul from being cool the way, when you're cool like that, people get hurt. And not to mention people who need you empathetically as like a sibling or a friend or someone who reaches out, and you're just like not there for them, or even the opposite, putting them down and making them feel bad just to maintain your persona. I would never, ever go back to that, but it's available. And if it brings 200 people into a Kiruv Shabbos, so what I do, I got in there and I entertained them with like a really cool surf story for like 15 minutes, and then immediately just segued into like, who made this world? And everyone's like, huh? Thought we were talking about surfing.
Right.
I'm like, where'd the world come from? And I just segued, and not only, and I segued for like the next 36 hours into the deepest, most incredible, heartfelt, loving, connective, Kabbalistic Shabbaton they've ever had. And I know people till this day who got sucked in with the cool rabbi at
Yeah,
that
I think, I
Shabbaton.
mean, I know you say you're not cool now, but I think you still have that going on a little bit, where people are the surfer rabbi and you're a musician, which I want to talk about music, but I think you still have that to a certain extent. I think there's
Well,
something,
it's available. That's
yeah.
what I'm saying is
Mm,
you
I hear
can
what you're
do the
saying.
full tear down, but
Yeah,
you don't have to lose you don't have to
your
lose
core.
the what well no, the core is not none of that. Meaning surfer wasn't my core. That was a
Right,
joke.
right, right, right.
But it's available if necessary. You understand? It's
Yeah.
available if
Like you
necessary.
don't have to be afraid that, those things are going to go away if you move
Exactly.
into a higher level of being. Does that
Exactly.
make
So the
sense?
workaholic who comes to my seminar,
Mm-hmm.
when they're done with the seminar, okay, they may not want to work for like a week or two. And maybe they should take off a week or two because they don't need to anymore.
Right.
But in the end, that person knows how to fire away at work. For
Mm-hmm.
many years, they've been doing that workaholic business. So they are an invaluable member of a business team. And
Yeah.
that's not going away. Only now, instead of having to do that, they can choose to do it.
Yeah. And I think that's
And
a
then
really, oh, sorry. Yeah.
balance it with their family and start
Yeah.
being healthy.
I think that's a really, I really love that approach because I do find just as I've grown up as a person, sometimes there's a part of me that misses my old self that, would be over dramatic about a certain thing or whatever it is. And I remember talking about that to a friend once, and she said, yeah, like, well, when you had those flaws, you got something out of that behavior that you don't get anymore because you're choosing to act in a higher manner, and it's a worthy trade-off. But there is a loss, when you self-improve, sometimes there is a loss of your old self, even if it was a lesser version of yourself. So I love this approach of you don't have to be afraid. You're not gonna lose that side of yourself. It's just gonna be used you're gonna be able to access it in a way that is beneficial to you and the people around you, as opposed to just kind of changing who you are, if that makes sense.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's a much healthier place to be generating from. And it's also whatever. It's just a pleasure for everybody because now you're doing the same actions, but you're generating from a much cleaner place.
Yeah.
And so it tends to cause people to be much more successful. People want to do business with you. It's a pleasure to be around you. It's much easier to get hired or you, whatever. People just want you around because you're a
Yeah.
pleasure.
And also, I'm sure just being around yourself, I'm very into that, just relationship with yourself, being able to be settled with yourself and be able to see yourself a certain way. And um
Yeah. It's a lot more of a conservative approach, even though it's kind of a radical approach. The possibility is pretty
yeah.
radical, but it's a lot less radical than the big wave of psychedelics going on in the world. Like now, everyone's all into that. That does the same thing, but it's a much more radical thing to be doing. You're also high as a kite. You lost all your motor skills, um, and integration is much harder to do after such an intense couple hours.
Hmm.
Whereas having this is the same exact place you can access, but without having to put yourself in. It does the same exact thing. It's just much harder to integrate. When you've
Yeah.
been high as a kite, for 6 hours.
Yeah. Yeah, it sounds a lot healthier. So I'm curious, how did you put together this program? Was it life experience? I know that you've said you listen to intellectuals like Dr. Jordan Peterson, who I
Hmm.
really like also. I'm sure there's a lot of Torah that goes into it also. So like, how did you put that together?
It's really a mix of like literally every 10 minutes you can like press pause on me. I have a little
Yeah.
pause button, and I would be able to tell you where that's from. You know,
Yeah.
I'm 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 an extreme integrator. I integrate. Like if you gave me a, after this podcast or even during, if you gave me a little criticism,
Hmm.
and if you could eavesdrop, you'd notice that I already integrated what you had said.
Wow.
So,
Is that
I,
skill something that you teach in the seminar? Because most people are very resistant to
well, I
criticism.
never went to school, so
Hmm.
there's something I've noticed over the years that people who go to school have they seem to be on some kind of schedule with exams and then new subjects and then exams and new subjects and then exams and new subjects. You never get to become it, you know. You by the time you took the exam, you're already on to new info,
Right.
and when do you integrate the learning that that you studied in the school system?
Right.
So I never was in a school system, so I don't know what
Ever.
that means.
Even as a kid?
Well, as a child, I spent kindergarten to fifth grade in class, but I was
Okay.
thrown out almost every day. And by the fifth grade, I was like, okay, I get it, like I'm not supposed to be here. And so I just like took it easy on the teachers and I just stopped coming.
Wow.
They pushed my name through the system, it was like, yeah, I did come sometimes and get come in for lunch or something.
Yeah.
And but I only discovered that I was such an integrator because of my lack of education, like formal classroom education. I only realized it when doing outreach at Asia TORAH, because all the college kids had a hell of a time becoming observant, and all the high school dropouts were, they had to be damn smart to understand what we were saying to begin with.
Yeah.
So it would have to be crack smart, which means they should have gone to university, but whatever reason they didn't. But once in a while, there was that anomalous kid who came in who never went to school. He became observant, like bam.
Wow.
And I was Shomer Shabbos, my first Shabbos, after being there for 3 days. I was Shomer Shabbos just because they taped the light switches. I don't smoke. And there were no such thing as cell phones.
Right.
So I was observant. The second Shabbos, I was Shomer Shabbos.
Wow.
The first lady who said to me, I reached out my hand to my hostess to shake her hand on Shabbos, first Shabbos meal. And I was early because I didn't know you're supposed to go to the Kotel and Dab first. So I was just starving. And I reached out my hand to her, and she, of course, was in a snood, like eyes with like I knocked her on her door till she finally got out of bed. And she didn't take my hand. And so she explained to me, you got to go to the Kotel, you got to go pray and find my husband and then come up to Shabbos meal later. So I said to her, okay, fine, but why didn't you take my hand? And she said to me that it keeps things very clear and nobody gets hurt.
Oh, wow.
And she couldn't have said that to a better person, because I was at the biggest party school in the world called University of California, Santa Barbara, UCSB, which I called You Can Study Buzz. I was at the biggest party school in the world, and I decided in the middle of the Gulf War, while protesting the U.S. involvement in the Gulf War, and of course the U.S. was protecting Israel, but that's how liberal I was at the time. And I had decided what a hypocrite I am, protesting war while willing to still break people's hearts. And so I said, the next person that gives me her heart will be wearing an insurance policy on her ring finger.
Wow.
And this is as an atheist hippie in Santa Barbara. So when she said it keeps things clear and nobody gets hurt,
yeah,
I was like, you got it, lady.
It's a really nice way to word. And I feel like a lot of things in Judaism are about just creating very clear lines, and just having those boundaries. So I wanted to talk to you about music, because you have an album. I found it on Spotify. It's excellent. I was even just listening on the car on my way home from work before the podcast. I hear a lot of maybe like 70s influences.
80s, probably more 80s.
More 80s. I know you're a big Bob Marley fan, so you have a song there that it's called One Love.
It's a Bob Marley cover.
Oh, because I was thinking, I don't listen to a lot of Bob Marley, but I'm like, that could be a Bob Marley song. That's so good.
It is a Bob Marley song, but I do kind of a Jewish verse of it. Like it's suddenly a Jewish verse. Yeah.
I mean, it sounded pretty Jewish to me, so I guess that's kind of the point. My favorite on the album is definitely Hineni. That's just a great song. I was just curious, just because I'm just going to indulge myself, but my audience mostly knows me as a songwriter, musician anyway. But do you do your own instruments? Like the guitar is on there, and even there's some piano. That's just fabulous.
I'm only on guitar on that. album.
The electric guitar, is that you?
No, I'm on acoustic on that album. It was recorded in Hollywood in my brother's studio, so he
Oh
has
wow.
access to all these like really top people. So when you're in that kind of situation, I mean, had I recorded in Jerusalem, I would definitely have played the leads.
Yeah.
But there's no playing leads
Yeah.
on your own album in LA unless you're like
Wow.
really, unless you're a real sessions guy. They just take your
Well,
guitar away from you.
well, anyway, it's excellent. I'm curious, like, so you have one album out. When did that album come out?
Oh gosh, I don't know. Um, a long time ago.
It said
Back when they had
2012,
CDs.
I think. Okay.
Yeah, probably
Well, you know what?
2012.
My album just came out and we printed CDs, and you would be surprised, like, of how many people buy so far. I mean, it's only out, my album came out a month and a half ago or so.
You can put
But
out CDs. Where do they
printed
plug the? Where do
CDs,
they put
yeah.
the disc into?
Well,
Into
I
car
know a couple
stereos
of
and
people that have CD players, believe it or not. And they also
wow.
make now, they make USBs also that people could, if they want to buy a hard copy. Um,
Cool. Uh-huh.
yeah, but it was like
Yeah,
more,
I actually I never really recorded that album to sell albums. I
yeah,
recorded that album because I got tired of people asking me after my concerts if I have an album.
yeah.
So
So
I could
that's what I was
finally
going to
say
ask
yes.
you. Like, do you still write? And what do you
I
do with the
I
songs you write?
I don't really, and a lot of those a lot of those songs are covers. Many of them are written by my brother Sam, if you look more carefully. So Hineni's written by Sam as well.
Okay.
And so
Well,
what
send my
really
compliments to the
happens,
chef.
yeah, my brother Sam, a few of them are mine, but my brother Sam is like this virtuoso composer,
Oh,
songwriter,
wow.
like really something unique. He's written thousands of songs, thousands, meaning
Wow.
like 6,000 more. And every song
Wow.
is a masterpiece. They're really special songs. And the so I grew up kind of on the end of his piano bench. He's 6 years older than me, and I grew up and with his writing, with his songs, like he sings some of those songs he just records and writes for me, meaning because
Wow.
he knows no one's going to listen to it the way I will. And and the we've been like really really close for our whole lives. And he kind of raised me in a way, which is why I'm
Wow.
so crazy. And
You
and
weren't in
the
school. You were raised by your brother.
raised by a a
Everything's making
brother.
sense now.
Yeah, I mean, when I was 11, he was 16 with a car, and we were best friends. I was all set, and but so because I'm a guitarist and a singer and a charismatic kind of guy, it worked out very well that he was writing and I was playing.
Mm,
So a lot of the songs he won't kind of make. I mean, he probably recorded them, but some of the songs he wanted just I would record,
wow.
and like they were kind of written for me. One of the most
For you.
beautiful songs he ever wrote is called "The Beautiful Child." Could be you can find it online, but he wrote
It
that for
wasn't
me.
on the album because I did
No,
listen to the whole album
yeah, "The Beautiful Child." He wrote it for me to play it,
for you to
and
play it.
yeah, yeah, and it's really special song. Yeah, it's been. I mean, it's in the hearts and souls of thousands and thousands of people because it's become the theme song of the Possible Use seminar, and it's about
Oh,
the
wow.
beautiful child. Remember how we spoke about how when you really break down the whole identity, the whole ego, and there's nothing left of you.
Yeah.
So at that point, there are four levels of what's there, and one you know about is called the neshama.
Yeah.
But that song is called The Beautiful Child. And that's our little toddler inside of us that comes out to play. And that beautiful child is really a very essential part of us. And we in the seminar we retrieve that beautiful child.
Wow. I
And
mean,
then
I'm
there's two
definitely sold.
yeah, and there's two other levels of being that are beyond that are
Could we get
other
a
levels.
little sneak peek of the last
Well,
two?
one of them's your kochos and nefesh.
Hmm.
So, like for example, you're a musician. That's part of your koch, a nefesh. You're also someone who would do this kind of podcast.
Hmm.
You're very clear thinking, very articulate,
Thank you.
and that's part of your kochos nefesh. There's people who would never do this,
Right.
you know. And so, and I do what I do because of my kochos nefesh.
Right.
And that's what I call our fact. Those are factory settings.
Yeah.
So you have now the neshama, you got the beautiful child, you have your kochos nefesh, those are the factory settings. And then the fourth one is when you've really done all that, like ego nullification, that identity, death. When you really do that, you can get to the level of four. And level four is you can be anyone in any situation. So you could be the hostess of a major event, or you could be the CEO of the company, or you can go speak to your kid's minahel who got in trouble, meaning the kid got in trouble,
Yeah.
or you can, fundraise, or you can do dishes, or you can, you can be the star, or you can be the support staff of a star. Whoever,
Yeah, because I was
whoever,
thinking like what if that isn't within your kochos hanefesh? Because some people don't, not everybody
right?
has the same.
So when you really get to that bittul, which is what the work I'm doing,
Yeah.
so then you can be anyone. When I sit on a plane, I sit there and I'm waiting for it to take off. But if I notice someone can't reach the overhead, I'm gonna be taking care of that. Like
Yeah.
I'm helpful. Who I am is helpful. Now, am I
Hmm.
naturally helpful? Being raised with two housekeepers, driver, chef, and not at all. Not at all. Like we used to just
Right.
you took off your shirt, you threw it on the floor, and the housekeeper came and got it.
Mm.
And it was back in your shelf within like 3 hours.
Yeah.
And so I'm not naturally helpful. I'm not really that given over to service. But today I am a man of service. I'm here to serve people.
I hear what you're
And
saying.
even though that's not really the way I was raised, not really
Hmm.
so natural to me, I'm much more, I'm from California.
Yeah.
California is the only place that only has 9 personality disorders. Yeah,
What's that?
They dropped one. They dropped narcissistic because if everyone's narcissistic, you can't call it a disorder.
Yeah, LA is a funny place because I've been there many times and I find because I'm in New York and I'm like I finally just realized on my last trip there I'm like there's a certain thing that people like strangers passing each other on I can't figure out the line of like friendly and just not caring about the person at all. And I'm like, I finally accepted it my last trip. I'm like, oh, I just really don't know how to interact with strangers in LA because I'm like either too friendly and then I'm intrusive or I'm like a New York snob, like being not friendly enough. I'm just not
It's a
used to it.
it's a fine line how to be friendly in Los Angeles, and it's you have to kind of be from there or live there for 20 years, which I don't recommend. Um, but I'm telling you, when I land every time, my it chills my soul.
Yeah.
Meaning, I know once I'm standing on my parents' cliffs overlooking the ocean, I know. By the way, no one should think like I stayed the Richie Rich kid. It was their bankruptcy that got me to Israel. That the whole tshuva experience happened was because my father lost everything. But in the end, he sold his home to Dustin Hoffman, the movie star, and and managed the money from that sale to be able to live his life out overlooking the Pacific. But yeah, that whole warm coldness is
Yeah.
chilling.
Yeah. I
I'd
mean,
rather someone be not nice.
right. And especially like as a New Yorker, it's like the same thing. Just people are a little bit more genuine or a lot more genuine. I just find like the same thing. But I actually find New Yorkers very friendly. I don't never had that experience. I know that New
Yeah.
York gets a bad name, but I'm always like if I need directions, like New Yorkers love showing you that they know how to get around and they'll help you. I That's just how I've always seen it. Um
Yeah. I
and
love
I
I love the East Coast stranger.
Yeah.
They're my favorite.
Yeah.
Yeah. A couple interesting things about California, about LA, is that you don't have to be considerate to anybody because everyone will tell you if you're being inconsiderate. So you can just it's really cool because then you can just be yourself. And however much that's cramping someone else's style, they will tell you.
That's so
And
interesting.
yeah, it's very interesting. So, for example, in the East Coast, no one knows how loud they can play their stereo in their house before, meaning without bothering their neighbors. So, what do?
Yeah.
They figure, okay, number eight's going to bother somebody for sure. 7 might, 6 probably won't. And then they'll spend the next 20 years playing their music on 6.
Right.
In LA, you put it to 11 You might think it only goes to 10, but ours goes to 11. You put it on 11. When the neighbor comes over shouting, now
Right.
you know 11's too much. Give
Oh,
10 a
interesting.
try. Find the volume that your neighbor can deal with, and they'll let you know. They won't even come shouting. They'll just come knock and they'll say, "Can you please turn it down?"
Yeah.
And but that's how you discover. What's really funny about that is my family lives in a shtetl in Yerushalayim, like the
Mm.
old school Me'asharim style shtetl, but with big sound system and like crazy parties. And my neighbors, they only know how to like run in their pajamas screaming, at 3 in the morning. And which is, of course, gives a nice thing for our family to laugh about for
Right.
years to come.
Yeah.
That seeing our neighbors in their pajamas shouting, in our sukkah or whatever. But it's my fault because I grew up in a society where if you've got a problem, you tell people.
Mm.
And that's such bad mitos on the East Coast. My wife's an East Coaster. So she's like,
Mm.
that is such bad mitos. Like, be
It's just so different.
considerate. Be
Yeah.
considerate of people. Like, and I'm
Yeah.
like, I am. I tell people when they bother me and let them tell me.
Right. I wonder though, like, because I'm trying to think if New Yorkers won't tell somebody, but I guess it's like maybe in a little bit of a different way than what you're describing,
Well, they
which
would
is
tell them, but the more bigger issue is people would be considerate to a fault
like
before.
there's an expectation to be considerate, right? Like even on the subway when it's like really packed, there's a certain amount of personal space that you're expected to like if there's an inch, like give an inch, if there's a
Right,
centimeter, you give the person their centimeter. That's true.
right.
I mean, yeah, and like no hate to anybody who's listening who's from LA. I just actually happen to think sometimes a place takes on the persona of like what like a place absorbs a personality, and the center of LA is Hollywood, which is fake. Like it's supposed to be,
Right,
it's all about creating fake entertainment.
right.
And I always just what I make the most fun of is like just everything is a show. I even was just saying recently, I'm like, even the trees, I'm like, they're just what's a palm tree? It's like just a tree trying to look skinny. Like to me as a New Yorker, I'm like, that's not a real tree. Everything is like picturesque, waiting to be photographed. I think like it does take on, and in New York, the center of New York is Wall Street, which is very hardworking and fast paced and things like that. So sometimes it does
Right,
kind of take on the personality of what it's around. And obviously that goes back to a place like Lakewood, which was built on a yeshiva. I think that that's kind of at the heart of Lakewood. And obviously Eretz Yisrael is always going to have like, there's something about, I was talking about this on my last episode, that like there's something about Eretz Yisrael that to me, and I don't know how to explain this to people who just don't understand it, but it just feels more real. Like Judaism feels more real, Torah feels more real, Hashem feels more real. It's very visceral to me when I'm there. I just feel it. It's like in the energy of the
right.
land. And I know
The
that
way I
sounds,
explain that is it's organic, meaning
yeah,
Torah was clearly written for Eretz Yisrael. It was not written for Lakewood. And
mm,
you can keep Torah in Lakewood, but
yeah,
you have not planted the Jew in their organic soil.
yeah, I agree.
So our organic soil as Jews, as the tribe of Israel we grow in Israel properly.
That's beautiful. All right. So there was one thing that I just wanted to ask
Yeah.
before we end, and I guess you'll answer as much as you can, but you've been doing this for a very long time, working in the cure space and also the cure
Yeah.
of Croven space. Um, just this is like personally to me, but I think, a lot of the listeners probably could relate to this also. You're obviously you're a positive person. Um, do you get burnt out sometimes? Because I'm only 27 and I already feel burnt out like a lot of the time. And I look around and it's like really hard to watch what's happening. Um, like what do you have words of encouragement? And you've already given me some today of, the Gan L'Chavschus piece, which I'm gonna think about. But words of encouragement of like how to navigate if you are a person who is really clinging to Torah and clinging to MS. Um, how do you navigate what you see around you?
I do get burnt out seeing it around me, seeing everything from the pain to the difficulty in keeping observance, or the um, the all the emotions and the family issues and just everything going on. There's a lot of stuff going on, especially
Yeah.
since COVID. So
Yeah.
the way I stay from being burnt out is by loving everybody so much. So that's what I do. I just love people. I take care of people.
Yeah.
I'm here to serve, and that's all I'm here to do. And I just serve, and everyone gets a smile, and everyone gets a "you're okay" in my book, and and that's just the way I go through it. Deep down, my heart's broken a million times over and over, but I do it with all of my. I interact with everybody. I'm big into interacting with people, so I just interact with love and care. That's it. Love and care.
Yeah. And that's all you could do, right? Is like, my mother once has said, she said that to me once, is like, you can either be nice to people or not be nice to them. Sometimes that's the only thing you can do for someone, is that's the only choice you have, is you could either be nice or not be nice. And those are your only two choices. So you just be nice, because, there's things are not in your control. All right. Well, thank you. Thank you so much for coming on. I hope maybe I'll get to have you on again another time, but this was really, really like such an honor, and I appreciate it so much. I'm sure the listeners will as well. I wanted to ask you if you could sign us off.
Always be kind, stand up for truth, and think for yourself.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Bye, everyone.
Great questions, by the way. Great discussion.
Oh, thank you. Okay.